Hey guys and gals, welcome back to the third part of my look at the three major kids networks, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, and the subject of today's video, the Cartoon Network, in which I discuss what I think is wrong with the network and how I would personally fix it. So without any further ado, let's begin with problem number one. Now problem number one might not seem like a big issue to most people, but there are some people, myself included, who do think that it is an issue worth discussing. That being that Adult Swim, which is their more adult cartoon programming block, starts way too early in the evening. Now, for those of you who don't know, Adult Swim is where you'll find shows like Family Guy, King of the Hill, The Cleveland Show, Bob's Burgers, and probably their most famous, Robot Chicken. Now, these shows at most are TB14, so they're meant for they're meant for a teenage audience and up. However, it starts at 8 p.m. And I do find a hard time believing that kids under 14 are going to be in bed asleep at 8 o'clock at night, at least in this day and age. So how would I fix this issue? Well, with solution number one, which is to delay the start of Adult Swim by, say, 2 hours, bumping it from its 8 o'clock time slot now to where it once was at 10 o'clock p.m. That's right. It once was at 10 o'clock, but then it got bumped down to 9, and most recently got bumped down to 8. So just to fix this entire fiasco by just bumping it back to 2 hours. That way you're still going to be airing the shows that the teenage up audience wants to see, but you're also giving kids the chance to see an extra 2 hours of content in which they can also go to sleep to if they need to. But what content will we see in those 2 hours? You'll see later on. But for now, let's move on to problem number two. Now, again, this might not be a big issue to most people, but there is some, especially animation fans like myself, that do think this is a weird issue. That being the network aspect ratio sort of snafu. Let me show you what I'm talking about. What you're seeing on the screen right now is what a standard Warner Brothers cartoon from back in the day would look like on HD television. You see those black bars? Those exist because the cartoons were made in full screen or 4:3, not 16:3 or HD or widescreen. So on the HD channels, the content is stretched to something like this, which animation fans like myself find a little insulting because it makes the characters look fatter and the animation a bit more rough around the edges than what it was. But that's not all. When you take a show like Adventure Time, which is made with HD in mind, and you put it on an SD channel, you would expect that they would just put black bars on the sides, or on a standard definition television, you just wouldn't see the area where the black bars would normally exist. I wish I could say that that's the case, but sadly it's not. As on standard definition channels, the content is instead shrunken down, so that when you watch it on a standard definition television, you still see the full HD video, not in HD of course, but you have the black bars making it widescreen. Now there is no rhyme or reason for why they do things this way, and from what I've read, this is across the board on the Turner Broadcasting stations. So that would be something that I think is a problem that they would need to fix. Moving on to problem number three, and this is probably something that a lot of people want me to talk about in this video, which is Cartoon Network's disrespectful reboots. Now, the biggest one of them all is probably Teen Titans Go. Now, for those of you unaware, Teen Titans was a show, I think in the mid-2000s, that was an anime Batman the Animated Series style show, and I actually enjoyed it quite a lot. So when they announced a reboot in like 2011 or earlier, like a couple of years ago, a lot of people were excited that they would get to see these characters again and go on new adventures with them. I wasn't even offended when they said that it was going to focus more on comedy, because I like humor and I like comedy shows. However, when you find out that the humor that the production staff is on is akin to that of a 10-year-old, mainly being that instead of witty humor like, say, Monty Python, you're instead just going to be seeing people, quote, hit in the genitals or falling out of windows, that does make a lot of people I don't know, give your show the cold shoulder, especially when they clearly cannot handle criticism that well. I'm not going to go into it too deep here, but if you want to see why they can't accept criticism or what some people's criticism, feelings toward the show are, I will link in the description a link to Mysterious Mr. Enter Animated Atrocities and to Pie Guy Rules' rants on Teen Titans Go, so you can find out all about that. However, what I also will talk about in this category is upcoming reboots, mainly being the Powerpuff Girls reboot. Now, I don't have a problem with Cartoon Network wanting to do a reboot of the Powerpuff Girls, because that's another show that I watched as a kid, and I quite enjoyed it. However, when you find out that the original voice cast, or at least most of them, including that of the three Powerpuff Girls, the main stars, have never been asked to come back and reprise their roles, and then when you find out that Tara Strong was beyond hurt of that fact, it doesn't give you much hope that the production staff behind the show even cares about the original. So, there you go. So let's move on to kind of the classic point on this show, which is what the chart says. Now, in 2013, Cartoon Network was doing moderately well, compared to the competition at least. However, when you go all the way to the end of 2014, they did too go on decline. And it just goes to show that with all these three networks, that the bad decisions they're making, while not maybe giving them an immediate hit, like say with Nickelodeon, which I talked about before, it is giving them an issue in the long run. So let's move on to solution numero dos, which is to create special programming blocks. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's say on Mondays, you have a 3-hour block of nonstop and classic cartoons and bumpers. Call it Retro Mondays, where you would air shows like The Flintstones or Where Are You, Scooby-Doo, or also air classic cartoons like Dexter's Lab and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Now, before anybody gets on my case, I do know that Boomerang exists. However, Boomerang has kind of been going down the toilet lately when it starts airing newer shows like within the past 2 years, or even shows that are still running. So, and let's be flat out perfectly honest with ourselves. A 5-year-old now is not going to go out of their way to watch The Flintstones or Where Are You, Scooby-Doo. But if it's on the original channel, they might just be a bit more open to watching it. Or, let's say on Tuesdays, you do something called a Viewer Choice Tuesday, where you do a 2-hour block of viewer-requested shows. Something akin to what Nickelodeon used to do back in the day, called You Pick Live. That was a great block when I was a kid because they would do trivia, they would do games, and they would let us, the viewers, pick what we wanted to watch. That kind of interactivity, I think, is in this day and age with smartphones and social media, could work really, really well. But the last solution, and probably the one that people might get on my case about the most, is to add more distinct-looking shows. Now, before I get into showing you shows, to sort of illustrate my point, I'm not going to say that any of these shows are bad. I'm just using them to illustrate a point. So let's take a look at shows on Nickelodeon. You have SpongeBob, Very Odd Parents, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. All of these shows have a distinct look and a distinct comedy style and a distinct tone and all that stuff, which differentiates them from each other. You go to Disney Channel, and you have a show like Gravity Falls, which is kind of serious comedy, and then you have Wander Over Yonder, which is something like an old cartoon on Cartoon Network, and then you have Phineas and Ferb, which also, again, has a distinct look, tone, feel, musicality, etc. Then you go to Cartoon Network, where you have shows like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, Clarence and Uncle Grandpa, where all three of these shows, you're looking at screen caps of them now, look similar. And I think a kid would maybe mistake one for the other just because they look so similar, design-wise and character design-wise. So I think what Cartoon Network needs to do is create shows that have a more distinct look from each other so people could differentiate them. And that brings us to the end of what I would do with Cartoon Network, what I think is wrong with it, and how I would personally fix it. If there's anything that you think that I missed, feel free to leave a comment down below and let me know. And I may or may not do the hub. So I'm just throwing it out there now. The hub may be a 4th installment. I don't really know yet. We'll see. But yeah, until next time, guys, I'll be seeing you.